Welcome back to Nicholas Comic Corner Classics as Non-Classics. This is episode number 1709 and Doubleshot number 1603. Got two more trades. One is basically like the issues that came out fairly recently. We have Wolverine by Ben Percy, Volume 3, which contains issues 14 to 19 of Wolverine, Volume 4. If you're going by Marvel Legacy numbering, this is basically issues 356 to 361. Yep. Yeah, it's most like a series of mostly standalone stories. The only really interconnected story that happens in this book, I had to reread because it's been a couple of days since I read this book. So, the first portion is basically Wolverine getting back the Mimosa Blade, which was taken from him. And he has to fight various people to get it, and he does eventually get it back. Does stuff here with Maverick. There's a cameo in here by Bishop, of all people. Yes, Lucas Bishop. Remember him? Yeah, he's barely been featured in X Comics last few years. I think the last time that he was physically active in an X book was Charles Schultz's awesome Astonishing X-Men, which I still think was kind of weird. The end of that book, at the end of that run, at the end of his run, only 12 issues. Yeah, that was simply the reason for it. And I did ask Matthew Rosenberg the reason why the book ended that run. Because he was transferring on the X-Men. That was the reason why. And after the whole thing with Blade, got a little bit with the Marauders, a little bit with X-Force. There's stuff in here he interacts with Black Tom Cassidy, where it also reveals that Krakatoa has a portion of Akakoro, which is another island that first debuted in the X-Swords crossover. That's actually attached to the island of Krakatoa. The rest of it's on Mars. The reason why, because the island rejected Krakatoa. Yeah, that was simply the reason for it. That was the only reason why. We also have Sage appears in here. Not Sage. Domino. Yes, Domino appears in several of these issues because I guess that Ben Percy was like, why not? Why not have basically Domino in this book? Because after all, he writes X-Force, so why the heck frickin' not? It is interesting, though, the fact that Ben Percy writes both books, and yet the only time these two books are part of a crossover was X-Swords and Hellfire Gala. There's never been like a crossover where it's exclusively just Wolverine and X-Force. That might be interesting to do, but I'm like, why couldn't they just basically do one? As far as I can tell, Ben Percy's never done it. Not yet, anyways. They're somewhat connected anyways, but not fully. Also, I have this earmarked here. There's a guy in here who looks like, believe it or not, Jeff Bridges from The Big Lebowski. Yeah, for some reason, the artist in this book drew him like that. And by the way, there are several different artists on here. If I think is Adam Kim in these issues? Yes, he is. He does issues 14 and 16, and that's it. We have Lynn Medina, who does issue 18. Paco Diaz, 18. And 19 is done by Javier Fernandez. And that's the cover for this trade is done by Andy Kubert and Frank Martin, who was the colorist. Yep. I gotta say, it's a bit of a step down from the last set of issues they had, which I thought were really good. But this is still pretty interesting. Let's look. Here's the Lucas Bishop cameo. But yeah, just a series of stories related to Wolverine, and we'll continue on through here. I give this book roughly I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It's a pretty good book. Am I still going to get the trade series this one? Yes, because I like it. Weirdly enough, this actually is one of two X books basically to have the red coloring for the trade paperbacks. The other is the main X book. Yet for some reason, they both have it. I'm not really sure why. Alright, next up, we're going to classic stuff. We have Avengers West Coast. The Epic Collection. Volume 4. Vision Quest. Excuse me. This collects West Coast Avengers 38 to 46. And number 3. Avengers West Coast 40 to 52. And number 4. Material for Avengers Spotlight 23. Yep. Now, I should point out, though, that the writer of this book, there's a couple writers in here. We have mostly John Byrne and Steve Englehart being the writer of this book. Yes, Englehart is the first writer of this book, and then he's taken over by John Byrne. We also have Mark Greenwald, D.G. Setcher, Margaret Clark, Tom DeFalco, Ralph Macchio, classic comic writer, Karen Doyer. Ralph Macchio does occasionally some work. I think the most recent book he worked on was, I believe it was a Black Widow one-shot. Famous, he's a awesome guy, me in person. And Peter Sanderson. John Byrne also has the artwork in here. Milgram, Rob Lem, Tom Morgan, Karen Doyer. Amanda Connor, yes, Amanda Connor. Mike Malley, Gavin Curtis, and Mark Bagley. Now let's see, the cover art, they don't, usually they say in these epic collections who does these cover art here. The front cover artist, they don't really say, it's mostly all John Byrne. Yep. Now you might be asking, why is it that the name changes from issue 46, 47 from West Coast Avengers to West Coast? Actually, I have no idea. This actually happened during a storyline called Vision Quest, which involved, get this, during the storyline, the Vision disappears. He gets kidnapped by, get this, a group that supposedly is run by the frickin' Russians. Yes, seriously. That John Byrne writes this book. They kidnap the Vision because of stuff that happened in Pages of Avengers. Yes, they kidnap him and they sort of erase him. They pretty much in a way take him apart. Yes, they take apart the Vision, who is Scarlet Witch's wife. And there's also over here Master Peddler here, involving Scarlet Witch's children, which I thought was kind of weird. We also had Agatha Harkness in here too. We also have 2 new members who joined the Avengers West Coast in these issues. First, we have the jerk U.S. agent. I say the jerk because he is one. Yeah, he has got a big reputation where nobody likes him because of how much of a terrible personality this guy's got. Yeah, he may be patriotic for the country. Nothing wrong with that. But the guy is a terrible person. Heck, this guy was basically a more violent Captain America than Steve Rogers was. And here's the thing. He was added to the team when he was added to the West Coast team without the consent of the team or even its leader, Hawkeye. Yeah, he basically was put on the team by the government liaison. Now, the way that the West Coast branch works is the fact that Hawkeye is the one who recruits all the members. In the case of this is basically just going to play out of the blue. And then here's something interesting, though. This kind of relates to Vision's storyline here, where they bring in the original Human Torch, Jim Hammond. They pretty much dig him up from a grave, who, by the way, he's a robot. And they briefly fight the Avengers, though he doesn't have joined the West Coast team. And here is something I've got to point out here. Now, What Culture Comics did a video of basically top 10 most unusual members joining the Avengers. They thought this Human Torch was Johnny Storm. Yes, seriously. What Culture Comics thought... Let's see if I can put him on the cover here. They thought that this Human Torch was Johnny Storm. Thought this was Johnny Storm. This is Jim Hammond. It says right there in the cover. It says, this is it. The righteous return of the original Human Torch. Not Johnny Storm. They thought Johnny Storm joined in this issue for Avengers. Yes, What Culture Comics made that big a mistake when it comes... Like, all the rest they made on the list, that was all pretty accurate. This was by far... And here's the thing. There were several commenters in that video who actually called them out on that bullcrap base that actually lie. You see, yes, Johnny Storm did join the Avengers in 2015 during the Uncanny Avengers run. Not in the 80s. Or at least basically not when this issue came out, which was like... Let's see, 50 came out in 1989. What was Johnny Storm at that point? Still Fire Fantastic Four. Never left the team. Yeah, by the way, these issues came out in the period of November 1988, and the final issue was released in 52 was released in December 1989. Fully 1 year worth of issues, which quite something here. Now, this is something I thought was quite interesting here. Now, we do have a debut of a brand new set of characters in here. Yep. Well, first up we have, I believe this is their debut. Now, these we have in here. First, you have the Evolutionary War. You're probably thinking, what the heck is this? What is the Evolutionary War, you might ask? This was an annual crossover release in the 80s. Yeah, Marvel loved doing this in the 80s. They didn't do much for limited series crossovers per se. The only other crossover they had involving individual issues that were horror tie-ins was Acts of Vengeance outside of the X books. This was a series of annual crossovers that even continued into the 1990s. No, I'm not kidding about that. I think Evolutionary was one of the first ones. The second one they have in here, and number 4, that's actually part of the Atlantis Attacks crossover. Now, you probably scratch your head like, wait, wasn't there a miniseries called this recently that came out just like 2 years ago? Yes. This is the one they did 1 year later. Now, that one, aside from the title itself, it's completely unrelated to Atlantis Attacks. What Atlantis Attacks is Seth, who is an Egyptian god who kidnaps various women to be his brides across the Marvel Universe. And basically, this is who he kidnaps. It's explained in this annual. Now, one of these women is happily married at this point in time. No, that's not a joke. One of them is actually married. Yes. This is who they kidnapped. Storm of the X-Men, She-Hulk, Dagger of Cloak and Dagger, Scarlet Witch, Jean Grey, Andromeda, who is Atuma's daughter. She at one point was part of, I think at this point, she was actually part of the Defenders in the 80s at this point, and the Invisible Woman, which they have her as Susan Storm Richards, someone who's married and who is a mother. Yes. And yet she's brainwashed to try to marry Seth. Like, look at this. Set of brides. This is basically like 6 women who were kidnapped across various Marvel books. And here, this is how they basically they listed when they were kidnapped. Storm was taken in X-Men Annual 13. She-Hulk was taken in Amazing Spider-Man Annual 23. Dagger, which this kind of makes sense because she made a debut in this book. Spectacular Spider-Man in number 9 for Scarlet Witch. Avengers Annual 18, Jean Grey. X-Factor in number 4. He was actually at X-Factor at this point in time. And I believe that was the, if I remember correctly, the 4th annual that they had. The 4th annual. And the original X-Factor had 2 more annuals in that run. And then the final 3 annuals will switch over to the government-sponsored incarnation. Andromeda. All they say is ditto. It could be that she was kidnapped in a something off-screen for in the case of Defenders. But this one seems a bit odd. Like, okay, it's one thing She-Hulk was taken in the Amazing Spider-Man Annual, which seems not much sense to do that. But this kind of makes weirdly some sense. Susan Richards was kidnapped in Web of Spider-Man Annual number 4. Yes, seriously. Now, of all these annuals, Amazing Spider-Man still has annuals very day. For numbering wise, I believe they had 5 more annuals before they switched over the years. And Kenny X-Men was also 5 as well. Spectacular Spider-Man, I think this one had 3 more annuals, and then it stopped. Avengers was kind of the same way too. Like I think it was about 3 more annuals, and that was it. X-Factor had a total of 5 annuals left. Well, Spider-Man had 6. This one actually ended at 10. Do not know why it ended at 10, just did. Basically, Evolutionary Wars mostly put the High Evolutionary just doing its whole evolutionary stuff. And believe it or not, an annual of this thing actually retconned something that actually happened in pages of Spider-Man. Or Amazing Spider-Man, where they retconned the Jean Grey, where basically the Gwen Stacy clone was not an actual clone. And they also retconned that Mars Warren didn't actually know any cloning. It was all done by the High Evolutionary. Yep. Yeah. And the case of it, this feels like just a regular Avengers story. Probably the coolest thing about this is Bill Foster taking on High Evolutionary. Yep. Which was really cool. Excuse me, yeah. Yeah. Now look at this. We have Iron Man in one of my favorite Iron Man armors, the Silver Centaurian armor, because I love the 80s. Yep, and the first one the against is a guy called the Filer. Yeah, he's not really big noteworthy villain. I think he just appears just in this one issue. And then in the following issue, probably by far the weirdest thing happens. And this relates to a storyline that Eckhart would basically explain in a miniseries in 2001. The Celestial Madonna. Yeah, where it was kind of revealed in Giant Size Avengers number 4 that, we have Mantis marrying, of all people, the ghost of the swordsman. And here we have the swordsman being sort of revived. At this point in time, I think he had been dead for about a little over a decade at this point. Because, he was dead. And he says him being brought back as a zombie. And this kind of in a way, Eckhart following up something he wrote. Because he wrote Giant Size Avengers number 4. He wrote that. And this issue was mostly put a follow-up to that. Which, kudos for basically Eckhart for doing that. And we also, now this whole thing in here with the Phantom Rider. Okay, there's an explanation for that. Yes, there was a time travel stuff involving the Avengers West Coast. Where the Phantom Rider, get this, he brainwashed Mockingbird to fall in love with him, and then he raped her. Yes, seriously. This is what Eckhart did. And the way that was written in this book here is that Hawkeye did not have basically a reaction that a husband would have if he found out his wife was raped. He basically acted like a complete jerk about it and basically just, it's not about him. Yes, seriously. 40, we have debut of the Night Shift. Yes, a group of minor characters who are led by the Shroud, who will still occasionally appear nowadays, but not really. I think the most recent appearance they made was actually in the Christos Gage Amazing Superior Spider-Man book. We have more so Moon Knight and the Phantom Rider. Yeah. And then basically 42 again, the Vision Quest. Where, the first thing they do with this is they actually have an issue where they have a flashback. We have basically Wonder Man fighting Ultron. Which, at this point in time, Wonder Man, I don't think he ever fought Ultron. But, yeah. That I thought was interesting. Yes, Wonder Man fighting Ultron, because here's the thing. Yeah, and then of course, then we have Mockingbird joining the team. And she's trying to reconcile with him. And by the way, the cover issue 43, it's also the cover of the trade. Yep. Yeah, apparently it's revealed that Mockingbird was responsible for Vision's disappearance. Yep, and this is what the scientists did with him. They basically stripped him. Now, there was a reason for this. Because, like I said, in the case of the Avengers storyline, where it was from 251 to 250, we actually had with the Vision try to take over the world via computer virus and download a bunch of info in his brain. And here's the thing about that. Apparently the plan for this group was to retrieve the info, and it didn't really go anywhere at all. And the big thing about this storyline is that we give the Vision a brand new look. Also, in the middle of the storyline, we have a new member. Like I said, the U.S. agent. And you gotta love 45's cover. Yes, this is what the Vision looks like for pretty much most of the rest of this run. He has this all white look. Now, I'm not really sure why Byrne did this for. Yes, Byrne did this because he was the writer of the storyline. And here's a little fun fact about this cover. Did you know this cover is actually a homage to a classic comic cover? Heck, even this line, "Behold, the Vision." Excuse me. Now you're probably asking, Nick, what cover is this homage to? Avengers 57 by Roy Thomas. Yep, that issue had debut of the Vision, and they had Vision join the Avengers for the next issue. Biggest way of the Ultron stuff. Yep. Now, And then we have stuff with the Black Talon trying to... This whole thing with Wonder Man, which I thought was really cool here. And then we have a abrupt, interruption in the storyline Adventure Quest because we got to throw in Avengers Spotlight because it features the Vision because John Byrne wrote it. Yeah, it just almost seems like you read this trade and you read the Adventure Quest story and it gets interrupted by an Avengers Spotlight issue. If you don't know what Avengers Spotlight was, throughout the first 35 issues, Hawkeye was the star of the book. And then for the last 5 issues, basically, it did have a series of backup features, but mostly it was a Hawkeye book. It was a really good book to read. When it originally known as Solo Avengers for the first 20 issues, and then from 21 to 40 it was retitled to Avengers Spotlight. Yeah, and then finally get back to the Vision Quest story where we have sort of an interruption for it. We have issue 46, the debut of a brand new team who are still around to this very day somewhat. The Great Lake Avengers. Yes. Yeah, the purpose of this group was that, there was no Avengers team defending the mid-state district because we have a team in the East Coast, aka New York, the West Coast, LA. And this team was formed because there was no team defending the mid-Atlantic states. So, Great Lake Avengers. Yep. And you might be asking, has there ever been an ongoing series with the title Great Lake Avengers? The answer is yes. But got canceled after 7 issues due to a joke. Actually, it wasn't a joke. It was basically canceled by Deadpool. No, I'm not kidding about that. They had the final issue have it where Deadpool shows up in the book. By the way, he was on the Avengers team at that point. Well, in the universe, they're called the Unity Squad. Where he tells us, hey, you've been canceled after 7 issues. They did have a mini-series back in 2004 by Dan Slott called GLA, which Flatman, when it was revealed by Flatman years later, he thought the name stood for the Gay Lesbian Alliance. That's what he thought what GLA stood for. And over the years, because apparently they couldn't use the name Avengers, they tried to track off Great Lake Champions, Great Lakes X-Men. At one point, they called themselves freaking Lightning Rods. Yes, seriously. And John Byrne created this group. And they're comprised of Mr. Immortal, Big Bertha, I don't remember her name, but she's a love interest of Mr. Immortal. Flatman. Yes, seriously, there's a character called Flatman. And he was not real at this point, but he was real a little later. They outed him as gay. Yep, one of 2 characters John Byrne created who was outed as gay. Now, in the case of North Star, who was the other character, that was always said to be outed as gay. Flatman, I'm not really sure. I haven't received much info about that one. But yes, 46, the debut of the Great Lake Avengers. And we even have Hawkeye, who actually quit the team because of U.S. agent joining the team. So he gets his own apartment. He gets to basically stay in a hotel room. And basically he's here on the news about the Great Lake Avengers. Like, what is this, a joke? And he gets knocked on the door. He's like, oh, come on. And it's his wife. Yep. And she was reconciled with the whole thing with Tigra. Yeah, there's this weird thing with U.S. Agent Tigra, where apparently he tries to calm her down. It was almost implying when you read this book that maybe U.S. Agent might hook up with Tigra, but no, not really. She ends up hooking up in the book with, briefly with Hank Pym, and then she did it actually in the 2010s in the book Avengers Academy. Okay, this woman here, who's actually sort of like a pterodactyl, they actually introduce these characters. We have attacking this building known as the Germana building. I don't know where this building is. I have no idea if it's real or not. We have Dorna Star, this negative guy. That's Doorman. Flatman. Yeah, and here's the thing about Dorna Star. There was a recurring joke for a long time that Mr. Immortals have been called that. He is frequently killed many times over the years, and it's up to Dorna Star to calm him down. And then, of course, basically, like, at one point she died, and she hasn't come back since then. I don't remember when she died. I think she died in the Great Like Avengers miniseries. And basically, I think they stopped doing the whole joke about him committing suicide. Yeah, and then, of course, we kind of continue with the Vision storyline, where you have these stuff with the Vision, and they try to take him away, but yeah, it's just basically really crooked organization who actually destroys the Quinjet because, yeah, it's actually a recurring gag over the years that the Quinjet gets frequently destroyed every time it shows up. And of course, you have guest star appearance by, of all people, like Captain America and She-Hulk, because of course relates to the Vision. And this one going to try holds her hostage, get her brainwashed. Oh, don't worry, the story will wrapped up by issue 49. Yeah, by 49, this whole storyline is pretty much wrapped up. And then they deal with the whole thing with, like, there's stuff in here related to the original Human Torch. That whole point of that is set the very next issue 50, because, of course, the stuff related to, and then, of course, you have the return of the Human Torch, who joins up with the Avengers West Coast, and then Iron Man shows up. Yep, Iron Man. And you gotta love this image. Now, I don't know which mark. I know it's not the Centaurian armor. They basically have him stop wearing that. This is probably Mark 5 or 6. My friend Edgar basically would confirm it. And he become like a lot reliant on his own book, on his own armor. Yes, it was stuff related to Armor Wars. I think that's probably what it was. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we have Agatha Harkness becomes the new nanny for the kids. And there's something not natural about them because it relates to Master Sizemon. Yeah. Where it turns out that the children are actually part of his own soul. Yep. And then he absorbs them. Of course, Sky wasn't happy about it. And then, of course, there's it's like still find more pieces. He's trying to think. Oh yeah, he may have like solved his whole problem. And then he disappears. Hold up, are you still out? Does he the pentagram in the hole in his chest? I don't think he does anymore. And then we lead to the whole thing with the Avengers West Coast annual. This book is great. Purely fantastic. I give this book a 10 out of 10. It's so good. I love it. Yep. So yeah, that's it for the particular review. Next up is going to be Attack on Titan. I'm gonna get that done tonight. I'm gonna get that done next. Okay. Next video. Bye.